All right, everybody, welcome back to the Jedi Show podcast. Sorry for the laugh on the intro. It's a pre thing we were talking about before. I'll fill you guys in on it later. Riverside, I see you. Anyway, it's good to be back. Back in our normal settings. We've been giving you guys a lot of footage from Identiverse the last couple of weeks, and so now we're starting to roll back into our normally scheduled program where we're virtually live with all of our friends. But Samir, time for a check-in, man. How you been, buddy?
I have been good. It feels like it's been a while since we recorded, but I think it hasn't been that long. It just we were kind of churning stuff out before, and now we're, picking the superstars to talk to, and I'm looking forward to the guest we have today.
Yeah, this guest that we're gonna bring on, I would say like 5 years in the making almost. I've been trying to. She doesn't know that, but in my head, I'm like, I gotta get her on the podcast. And I've been doing that for like 5 years. And there was a couple of times that I did reach out and ask, and just kind of due to work things or whatever. It wasn't the right timing. But now it's the perfect timing. And we have. Listen, I was working on this intro. I'm probably still gonna screw it up. But when I tell you, if you're listening to this, I need you. If you're in a car, I need you to pull over because we have You want to talk about OGs of identity. You want to talk about identity celebrities. You want to talk about identity superstars. Like her name comes up. Like she's top 3 in my book anyway. And the fact that she's on this podcast, I mean, it legitimizes everything that me and Samir do. Not really, but it's awesome to have her because she is just an awesome person. So ladies and gentlemen, without any other further ado, we are welcoming to the Identity Jedi Show, one of the Identirati, one of the OGs in the game, and my favorite escape room partner because we are undefeated, setting records wherever we go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Sarah Cecchetti to the podcast. Woo!
Hello, Identity Jedi Show.
Sarah, welcome. Thank you so much for being on. I am so excited for this conversation because it has been a while since you and I had a chance to really just sit and nerd out. And so I will try my best to make sure that while we nerd out, we don't exclude anybody, Samir. So you're going to have to jump in there, buddy. Because
I do my best. I'll be your trusty sidekick.
So I'll have to start it with a quick story, right? So I remember when I first met Sarah, I actually don't even remember what event it was, but it was probably with something Ping, because she was at Ping at the time. And I think this was right around the time where you and Ian in the group were talking about starting ID Pro. But we'd been a couple of conferences. I'd heard her name. We'd kind of seen each other, but she had her patented at the time, her red blazer, but she also had the earrings that she's wearing right now, which were her Fido Key earrings. And I was like, that is me. She's my type of nerd. I've got to go talk to Sarah. And then from then on, we just hit it off. We've been friends ever since. I've loved watching all the things that she's done after leaving from Ping. And it's so funny when you look back on how many people, I think Ping and Cellpoint at one point had the biggest collective of identity talent, in any company history, and then they just scattered to the winds. But it's been amazing getting a chance to kind of get to know you, watch some of your accomplishments and things of that nature. So giving you your flowers as we need to do in the present. You're an awesome force in identity, and just an awesome person. So I want to let you know that.
Thank you. And David, I want you to know that you're a terrible person because I did have an undefeated escape room record, but because you did not come to the escape room this year, I lost. I lost for the first time, David. The first time. And I blame you.
I'm going to take all of it. It's my fault. I did a horrible job of scheduling everything. And so I had all the podcast content we had to create. And when you sent me this, I was like, why didn't I just reach out to her beforehand and go, hey, when are you doing the escape room so I can block her? So that's my fault. Right. I'm sorry. Sorry, friend.
Block that
next
first.
year.
Yes.
Yep. That's the first thing I'm blocking on my calendar.
I need to restart my streak. Yeah.
Oh yeah. We're gonna restart it. I can't. I feel terrible. Damn it. We'll fix it. I promise we'll fix it. All right. So many things to talk about. I kind of want to start here, right? And I'm going to phrase the question around, I want to get your opinion on where identity is today, but I kind of want to phrase it around what you thought it was post or pre going into AWS and now post coming out of AWS. Cause I feel the time when you are at AWS, and we talked about a little bit on the pre-show call, right? One of the great things about AWS is when you're there, everybody picks up the phone. The level of access you have to kind of really between companies and teams and things that you see and some really, really big problems that you get to solve, right? I think it kind of changes some of the perspective on how you look at things, right? And you see how companies are addressing things. So kind of what you thought going into, pre-AWS about identity, what you've learned since then, and now looking at it, like what are your thoughts on the state of identity now? And is that any different than what you thought kind of going in before AWS?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, I quit AWS 2 weeks ago. So I am, and we'll talk more about what I'm doing next in a bit, but I am literally inbox zero right now, which is very exciting. So I should say I am not speaking on behalf of any companies. Please don't sue me. I can spill all the tea, so no one can get me in trouble. So I started at AWS 5.5, almost 6 years ago, and
green badge, yellow badge?
I left with an orange badge.
Wow.
Yeah.
Look at you.
And so when I first started, I had this really cool experience where we were looking at all of our metrics and we could see a whole bunch of workloads moving from London to Dublin. And we were like, what the hell is going on? Like, why is everyone doing this at once? And then we said, oh my God, that's Brexit. Like, we can see Brexit. Like, AWS is so huge that, like, literally world political events show up in your daily metrics. So it was really cool, but AWS is it's huge, and it all more or less grew organically in terms of the identity capabilities that it has. And so it's only recently that you were able to put two-factor authentication on your root account and be able to use two YubiKeys, right? And that's due to the great work of Aaron Crow and Dean Sachs and getting all of these accounts all under one security profile to the point where you can do that is a huge accomplishment. So working at AWS is like you can steer the ship like 1 inch in the space of 5 years. But when you steer it that 1 inch, right, you have millions of companies coming along with you. And so you're preventing all of this fraud. That's just incredible. Like the scale that you're working at is incredible.
Yeah.
And I think we are all former AWS on this call.
We are all former AWS.
Well, I'm Amazon.com. I didn't pass the bar for AWS. I'm retail baby.
Yeah.
Oh, I love the whole badge thing. And Sarah, I'm just going to read between the lines that the 5 years that David's been trying to get you on the podcast was probably because you worked for Amazon, but that's okay.
Me because they don't through HR, like, hey, can I go on a podcast? What podcast? Who are they? That many listeners? That's a lot of listeners. Who's listening? Yeah. Like, is there press? Like, it's much easier to fix, when you're without strings.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, no, and the joke about the color of the badge, I just remember, just some people with a bit chest pumped out when they had the colors from 20 years at Amazon, right? Like I've been through some battles and some wars, right? And I just remember those badges. So it's like the mark of a warrior. Been at Amazon 5 years.
No, every 5 years that you spend at Amazon, you get a new color badge.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So, David, I didn't want to interrupt you or Sarah. So, continue with escape room stories and your victories.
Yeah, at DC Identiverse, David and I were on the team that broke the world record for the escape room.
Yeah. Oh man! And so they have it every year at Identiverse. Is that right?
We find them every year. Yeah.
Oh, you do.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So
it's not an employer thing. It's not an AWS thing. It's just I really like escape rooms, and you can't really do an escape room alone. It's not any fun. And it's especially fun if you get smart people with you. And so if you do it in an identity conference, there are a ton of smart people. And especially people who are like, one of the skills that I think is critical to being good at identity and access management is lateral thinking, which is the ability to take a problem and look at it like from the side and say like, I see this from a totally different perspective. I can look at things in multiple ways. That makes you really good at solving escape rooms. And so that is why identity people tend to set records in escape rooms. So every year I organize one.
That's awesome. And I think you're right. I think, and I didn't come from identity. I came from broader cybersecurity. And I think we always talk about the customer experience. We talk about the experience of the person implementing the product, the tool, more from an operational standpoint. But I agree with you from an identity standpoint. First of all, identity itself who owns the identity programs at large companies, right? It's if you look at any company outside of obviously the big tech or the ones that that have maybe homegrown solutions, the majority of us who run cybersecurity programs at any enterprise, the identity ownership could lie with potentially 4 or 5 teams, different pieces of it, right? Like to the point where when I go and have a conversation, say, well, you don't like your existing IGA product. Well, would you like to look at what we've built? They're like, well, I got to, consult with help desk and support and infrastructure, and the executives need to be informed, of course. But what about maintenance? Who's going to maintain it? I don't want to own this, and it just becomes a very big endeavor. It's almost like, yeah. So you're right. You have to think about every single one of those viewpoints when you're building something or breaking something.
Yeah, there's a lot of communication and a lot of different people who want different things for different reasons. People who are pushing usability, right? We've got to get those customers through. We've got to get them fast. We've got to open up that funnel and make it less friction. And then you've got like, oh, well, guess what? That increases fraud. Yes, and then you have other problems in other departments. Yeah.
This is, I mean, listen, I know people, well, I know there's some organizations that like to use escape rooms as like team building exercises, but the more we're talking about this, I'm like, you're right. So like, this is perfect for identity. Like if you've got an identity team, like you should be doing escape rooms because of the fact that not only like the lateral thinking, but like the team interaction, like you have to, in identity, you have to talk to like so many different parts of the business to get anything to go. Like you can't just take a step forward and like, well, I'm going to go do this. And it's like, I got to talk to this person. I got to talk to HR. I got to talk to the business application owners. And I have to figure out like, you said like usability and users, all these things. Like, it's like, I got to take 7 steps before I take 1. Right. But all these steps have to happen like in parallel, like all at the same time. Otherwise nothing gets done. And so I just think like, I mean, that's what makes like one escape room really fun is like, you've got the clock starts and it's like, what I love about it is like, okay, we got to solve these challenges. Awesome. Love problem solving. But now I'll also solve the problem of now I got to learn how to communicate with these people, and we got to develop shorthand like really, really quickly because we got like a small amount of time to do it. So like that team building and communicating and problem solving and then team problem solving, right? Because the problems in escape rooms are like, Sarah will have a piece, Samir will have a piece, I'll have a piece, and we have no clue how they come together yet, but we just know that like, hey, these all go together, but we don't really know how like yet. And we all have to dig in and kind of figure that out. Like this is, oh my gosh, I totally know where I want to take this, but this is amazing. I really think that's a thing. Like I could really see like teams really benefiting out of that and like showing like all these skills that you would have to use both in running identity.
Yeah, and the communications piece is hugely important. Like as identity nerds, we are terrible at coming up for like 5 words for the same thing or 1 word for 5 different things. So one of the things we did at ID Pro is a professional association. It's a nonprofit for identity professionals. And the executive director is Heather Flanagan, and she has been tireless in guiding people to write articles about identity. And then she puts together a glossary of every time someone defines a term, she puts it into the glossary for the ID Pro body of knowledge. And so that document now exists. And there are conflicting terms in there, right? There are things that say, no, I know what token revocation is. That's not what token revocation is. I don't agree with you. Right? And so she'll put both definitions in and say, like, look, when some people say it, they mean this. When other people say it, they mean that. And that is super helpful to know when you're getting started as an identity professional, to know, like, this word doesn't always mean what you think it means. Right? So that kind of really fast communication is critical.
Yeah. You keep saying that word. I'm not sure you know what it means.
The very first identity team I was on, our manager would have flashcards and they would say, like, authentication, authorization, and like he would have us define them. Like, go, we're in the team meeting, you're in front of everyone, like you have 5 seconds, give me a plain English explanation of that word, because that's like, if you're on a customer call, that's what you have to do, right? If it's clear that they don't understand something, that they don't understand how the product works, you have to be able to explain it quickly in plain English, and it's easier to do that if you practice. It's a skill just like any other skill.
Yeah, very good points. All things that we don't do. Like I guess I say coaching, because I'm trying my best to get out of consulting because I hate it. I do. So, but still talking to like different customers, and I have friends and relationships there. And I'm like, you know me, sir. I'm always willing to help somebody. Somebody's got a question. But one of the things I tell them a lot is like, you need to get your team like experience talking to get out of your echo chamber of what do you guys do in identity? Like go talk to the business and just ask them, like, don't come to them and ask them from a standpoint of like, hey, I want you to do this. So I'm going to ask you, just talk to them and say, what does your business unit do? Right. And then you can like, how does authentication help in that? Or how does being able to get to an account and have them sign in? Like, how does that make, your job easier? How does that affect what you do from a business perspective? And then let them start telling you what their business is and how identity focuses into their business. Because I think sometimes what we lose is that this is everything that we do. And I think you can find this anything in life, right? So we're in it all day, every day. So it's the most important thing to us, but it is the 157th thing on their list that they could give a shit about. They're like, I don't care. And to them, it's magic. It's like, okay, it just happens. They can sign in everything. Cool. Right. And we're just like, right. No, we have to have this and all these things. And they're just like, just make it work. Like, this is what I need for this to work to make my job easier. Right. And I think we miss, sometimes teams miss just getting that from that business. So they understand, okay, this is what it means in your context. And so me doing something to saying, I'm going to make it more secure. So it's going to be better for you, but it causes you a lot of friction and makes your job harder to do. You miss the benefit of it because you're just like, you just made my job harder.
Yeah. When I was at AWS, we had a lot of customers who were like, I just want it to work out of the box. Like, just make it work. Just push. I just want to click one button and have the whole thing roll out. And it's like, well, you can't do that because the risk profile for different companies is different, right? So if you are protecting healthcare information, like there's no refund on that, right? Like if that information gets out there, you can't give someone their money back, right? You can't undo that. You can't unspill that information. And so you want a very different security profile from someone who's like, yeah, I have an online spelling game. And I just need for my users to log in and know what level they're on. And it's like, okay, like that you want to be a really super easy, usable experience, probably passwordless, probably single factor, right? Like snappy, fast. Healthcare information, like there's no going back if a attacker gets in there. And so you really want a lot of secure protection in that experience. And there's a whole spectrum, right, in between those two. So it's literally impossible as an identity company to put a single button and say, just make it work, right? So you have to talk to a company like you were saying, David, about like, what is your business process? What do you do? What keeps you up at night? What is the worst case scenario here? And if you come at them with like your acronyms and your $10, like, what is your SAML attestation like opinion? They're going to be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm going to go somewhere else, right? So you have to talk to them, but you have to talk to them in plain English.
Yeah. We need a lot of translation, right? And I think most tech niches deal with this as well, right? I bias because this identity is the only thing I've ever worked in. I feel like ours is so much more tied in with the business though, because we're just like this underlying thing of all the stuff that you do from a business perspective, right? Like if you look at something like, okay, this is an example, but I'm not trying to pick fun at anybody, but like something like endpoint, right? Like it's like, okay, it's that, like, okay, it's endpoint. It's like that's something that mostly it doesn't affect, business until it doesn't work, which we saw. But it's like, there's not a whole lot of discussion I need to have with you to deploy an endpoint to your device. It's like, okay, look, install this endpoint, collect this information, and you're good to go, right? Like you never interact with it on a day-to-day basis, right? Until it bricks your Windows machine and you can't log in. But anyway, but like, with identity, it's like at some point, like you're going to go log into something, right? You're going to try and access something. As a developer, you're going to try and go build APIs and then connect to something and create API keys. Like it's a constant touch from the user's perspective around this. There's that end of it, but then there's also the back end stuff that we're putting together and saying, okay, how are we doing the policies for, authorization and whether or not we're doing conditional access based on who you are and what you need to get to, right? There's those things that the user will never touch, but we are affecting the way they work every day, right? So I think it's always been to me like a very unique niche area because we're so tightly kind of tied into the business and we have not to that level, but we kind of have like CrowdStrikes moments like all the time, right? Because we're just like, oh, we're going to change this and remove this group. Holy shit, everybody's yelling at us. What do we do? Right? Yeah. Like we're kind of like not to that level, but it's like, I tell people we're kind of used to this area. So we figured out ways to kind of like, all right, we have to change this or this is what we're going to change. And we have to go figure out what the effects are. because we're so tied into everything the business does, that the little changes we do have big ripple effects. But like with that, right? One of the things that I've always said, right, kind of looking at the market the way it is now, if we're talking about like this kind of consolidation movement that we have, and we're kind of coming back to, this kind of platform that everybody's kind of preaching. I say coming back to, because for those of us who've been around, right, like we saw this back in the early 2000s, like we tried it and it was horrible, just because I would say mostly technology at that time, and like the fact that we have like, SOA was still kind of a thing, but we tried to hold this, a couple of companies as one big, huge stack. We're going to handle everything, whatever. And it just didn't go very well. Right. But we separated, everybody went best of breed. But what we lost in there was the fact that identity in itself, right? And I'll say the art of rolling out identity like reaches so many different things. It's not just one thing. It's not just authentication. It's then also authorization. It's also governance. And then it's also, privilege, and how you manage that around there. And then there's a whole part of authorization. So it's all these things that connect together. And it's like this very connected kind of dance. And so it always made sense for it always to be together. We went best of breed for everybody to kind of figure out. But now we're realizing we want to come back together because customers want the one button. They just say, hey, just tell me what the solution is and put it all together for me. So as we're looking at this right now, going into this kind of market and, the things that we've learned over the last decade, what are you seeing from like, both like competitors, where the market is, customers and their appetite for this? Do you think this is a good move for identity, kind of going back to this platform play? Or are you like, oh no, we need to stick with best of breed?
I think it's different for different use cases. Like, I think we as an industry are fairly mature in terms of workforce identity, right? Like, we've been doing that for much longer, right? Like, when my mom was working, right, she would go into the office and that's where she would use a computer, right? And so the only people who ever logged in were employees. Like, that was the only context in which you did that. And it's only recently, I say recently, we are old people, you and me, David, and Samir probably too. But right, like it's only recently that like there have been e-commerce and online services where identity is actually part of the checkout flow. And if you are part of the checkout flow, like that is a critical place to get things right.
Right.
And to make sure that you really have a very, very tailored, customizable experience there that is really seamless. And so, there are always trade-offs, right? If you use a best of breed, then you really get that customization. But if you use a platform, then you really get a lot of reliability, right? You really get a lot of uptime is incredibly important, right? Especially in consumer identity. Like, there's no CIAM product today that I know of. CIAM is consumer identity and access management that has 4 nines even. Like, nobody is promising and delivering that in the market. And I think we're not far from that, right? I think we're going to have somebody with a multi-region architecture that's going to accomplish that, but it's not there yet. It's not done yet.
That's so interesting. I wasn't aware of that. And I was going to say, I'm surprised that, that's, customers haven't demanded that, but I mean, you got to take what's available, right? If nobody has it, it's like, I can ask for it all I want, but this is what's here. So yeah. And I can listen, I can tell you as a, always putting on my consumer hat, right? It's always weird living in a space where it's like, you deal with all this stuff every day, you do all the technology, whatever. And then like, when you kind of go out in the world and do your regular life, it kind of affects you, right? It's bad. Cause I look at everything now. I was like, I look at the experience, how I log in, how I can get access to something. I was like, this is such a bad identity flow. Like, why? But like recently, like, right? Because the worst thing you want to do, especially on the consumer side, is like you don't want anything stopping your consumers from doing what you want them to do, which is consume. Whatever your product is, you want them to be able to go and get to it. And so in my own little world right now, like outside of everything else I do for my business, my life is consumed by electronics arts, college football 25, because it's the nostalgia thing and it's back. And what I hate is when I go in and the freaking EA servers are down and I can't log in. And it pisses me off because then I can't play the game. Right. So I'm just like, hey, fix your freaking CIAM product. Okay. Like I'm that guy. I'm the horrible one when I have enough issues and I'm like, okay, let me go dig in and see what this is. And I send them a nice little email, not about support. I'm like, okay, listen, this part is broken. Please send this to your team.
You're like, I use SAML tracer and I can see that your token is not.
So I need you to know this is the area that you go look at. Fix it now because I need to play. But yeah, so I'm really surprised at the lack of 4 nines thing. But to your point, I think that's coming. I think, one of the conversations that I've been kind of having in some off groups is around CIAM in general, because I feel like as much as that's our one chance as identity people to like really shine and be a beacon in the business and be like, listen, we can help make you money and make this better for your users. And I feel like we just don't talk about it enough. Where I feel like identity is still very workforce heavy. It could be just experience, right? Like that's kind of where I've worked with the most. But even when I do talk to customers about it, like, and I tell them like, okay, let's have a conversation about what you want to do with identity. They list all these things. They never talk about it. Like I have to bring it up and go, so what are you doing for this? They're going, oh yeah, that stuff,
Right.
the devs or the market, like somebody over there handles that stuff. And I'm just like, that's, kind of important. Like it's interesting to me that hasn't been more of that we don't holistically talk about that there. And I think it's because it's historically right now been run by either marketing departments or dev departments. Like it just kind of comes up as this thing like, oh yeah, we want to do this. And I guess we need people to log in. So yeah, we'll kind of do something. Okay, great.
Yeah, I recently saw a talk from the CEO of PayPal. For some reason, his name is escaping me right now, but he's new. And he was like, this is stupid. Like, why haven't we invested in identity this whole time? Like, we are the merchant handler for like millions of companies. Like, do you realize how much better we could make this? And I was like, thank you. Like, someone understands. I'm so glad. So, like, there are people out there who are starting to see it, but I don't know why it's taken this long.
Yeah. Interesting. So one of the things that we kind of talked about in our pre-show, right, was like ease of use around this. And Sarah, you kind of hit it on it earlier. Customers asking like, hey, I just want the button. Give me the button, make it all work, right? And that's like because identity is so broad, right? And it changes. I tell people, it's like, listen, the fundamentals of what you need to do are the same for everybody, right? And so I can give you the playbook if you need to do these things. How you do it and how you execute it, that changes so much based on business, what you need to do, what you're delivering, how you're structured, right? And that's where the kind of complexities come in. But with that, I do think there's areas, right? And that's why, us nerds exist, right? Is because we look at things and find ways to solve problems and make things easier. I do think, and I put this on the entire industry. I think we've gotten a little lazy and complacent and really pushing and making some stuff more innovative to go, hey, we can kind of make this easier. Because let's be honest, for about a decade, like everybody was kind of making some money. It's like, oh, this is really hard. So we can go get some consultants and we can charge you $300 an hour for 30,000 hours for, hey, this is great. And everybody's making money. Everybody's happy. But now we're starting to get to the point where it's like, hey, yeah, that's not really feasible and it shouldn't be the same anymore. Like, so this is what technology does, right? Let's start making this easier. What are your thoughts around like some of the areas where you look at it and goes, we can absolutely just make this easier?
Yeah, so I like to draw the parallel between so if you look at project management in the 90s, like nobody knew what Agile was, nobody knew what Waterfall was, nobody knew what Scrum was. Like these were all foreign terms to developers and they were known by like a very niche set of people who were like, yes, I will consult for you for $300 an hour, right? And like now everyone knows these terms and everyone is familiar with these concepts and they can adapt them to their own environment, right? And that's what I think we need to accomplish with identity. And that's part of why we built the body of knowledge in ID Pro was to say, look, an average developer needs to know what authentication is. They need to know what authorization is. They need to know about the choices they're making and what best practices are in OpenID Connect, in SAML, what the trade-offs are in implementing these systems. Ideally, they even know like, hey, should I use policy as code? Should I use policy as data? Like, how should I be structuring my authorization? Like making all of these decisions on their own and not hiring people like you, David. Like, let's put you out of business because you hate consulting anyway.
Yes.
Right? Like, let's get to a point where these are not like difficult to understand concepts, right? They are not, it's not learning Greek, right? It's not rocket science. These are very easy to understand things once they've been explained, right? It's just the fact that a lot of people haven't bothered to learn them or no one has bothered to teach them. And we need to fix that and we can fix that. And it should be way easier to learn identity. And I think all developers should know identity. It should not be this niche thing for an identity and access management team and they need to go solve this problem for the whole company, right? That team will still be there, but I think a lot of those decisions should be pushed further down the org chart.
Yeah, agree. So let's get that done.
I was just going to say, let's get that
I
done.
really do hate consulting.
I was going to say, you sound like a consultant. Is that primarily because developers don't want to take on more than the fun stuff that they like doing and say, can someone else handle this other stuff, whether it's documentation or dealing with the identity engine, or it almost feels like it can come from the top, but I think it also should be part and parcel of people's. Sorry, go ahead. You were going to say something, Sarah?
I don't want to give the impression that I am victim blaming here. This is not the developer's fault
No,
in
no, no,
any
no.
way, shape, or form. This is our fault. This is the fault
No,
of the people who build products and the people who educate people about products. We have done a terrible job, right? And so we need to make our products easier to use. We need to have better informational material. We need
sure.
to have more explainers, easier things. Like I'm wearing an Auth0 shirt today. Auth0 is an old company that Okta ate alive. And they hired Vittorio Bertocci, who is a wonderful, wonderful person who passed away last year. And he recorded probably hundreds of OAuth explainers and explainers in general about identity. That is the spirit in which we need to act of like, I'm not just going to do this for you. I want you to understand what we're doing. I am going to make a graphical interface for this identity system. I'm going to make you a dashboard. I am actually going to invest in design so that you understand the risks and the trade-offs that you are making in terms of latency, in terms of friction, in terms of cost. Like all those things should not be obscure and hidden.
Makes sense. Got it. Got it. Sorry, I'm not. I didn't think you were blaming anyone. I think it was more of the sense of like ownership and responsibility, and part of it's the explainability and understanding, and the products have to be better. The other piece, and just having now worked with different teams, it's almost like one, we try to hoard knowledge at large companies and say, no, I do this and this is all I do, and oh, you're going to automate that away, what am I going to do next, right? And the other one is like, oh, okay, this is easy, that's what the product does, okay, it's cool, it's fun, it's I can make it part of my workflow, right? And then I think it's both sides to the coin, and but yeah, I agree with you. I think identity is one of those. I think project management is one of those too. Like I still remember early on in my career, like the agile Scrum Master, right? Oh, I'm not going to take notes because they're going to take notes, or they're going to send out meeting minutes. Well, will we all take ownership of this project's success? It doesn't fall on one person, right? I think it's a great example, and I think it's just. And you're right. The people who have to take the lead, unfortunately or fortunately, are folks like us on this call, and our brothers and sisters on the field, right? To get them, empower them, to empower their customers, right? How do we help them help themselves with their customers, basically?
Yeah, and we're getting better at it. Like one of the projects that I worked on at AWS is called Cedar. It's an authorization language. And like one of the ways that we got developers involved, like it's little things like going back to being in the IDE itself and saying like, look, like we have proper syntax highlighting in the IDE so you can visually see what's going on, right? It's those little tiny things that you're like, oh my God, this makes it so much easier for people to understand what's going on. I'm not just editing white text and trying to figure out as a human what the machine is going to do.
Nice.
So it's little things that are just that making that developer experience that much better makes the developer way happier to work on it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think, Ian said this. I was talking to Ian Glazer, everybody. This was maybe about a month ago. Him and I were talking, and he kind of threw this idea at me that I thought was interesting when you think about it. So he goes like, "An identity. We've been so focused on talking to like, oh, the business is our customer, business is our customer." He was like, "But is it? Like, what if we just had the wrong customer? Like, what if we've been trying to talk to the wrong people this entire time?" And when I stopped back and thought about that, I was like, that makes a lot of sense. Because to your point about the products there, like we've built because we said that our user was the business, we built these products and silos and all this stuff or whatever to make it easier for the business to go use and do this. But like it needs to be used across the organization, but we made these products very hard to even talk to and work with. We didn't make them in a friendly manner that it's like you could actually just consume this. What we did was we just went and made a box and we delivered it to the user and said, here you go, here's a pretty box, you can do these things and it does all this stuff for you. It's like, great, but nobody else can use this box. Like we didn't do a good job of like APIs and integrations and how do you use this? And what happened was the way we built applications, the way we deploy stuff completely changed while we were doing this. And now you drop in an application, it's API first. It's like, that's like the first thing you build. It's like, where's all the APIs? Okay, great. I'm glad you made a thing that does this. Now, how do I make it do what I wanted to do? Right. And we didn't do that. And so when he said that, it really got me to thinking. I'm like, wow, that kind of really changes. I mean, a lot, like how we talk about this stuff, and not only how we deliver from a product perspective, but how we deliver it from like a marketing perspective, and who we talk to, and what kind of content we put around this, and how we can have these conversations. I was like, it is. I'm not ready to say we picked the wrong customer, but I'm close to saying, I was like, hey, maybe we were looking in the wrong place for this.
Yeah. So first of all, it is Ian Glazer's birthday today. So happy birthday. I know
What?
the episode won't come out for a while, but happy birthday, Ian. May you have many colorful socks.
Many, just thousands.
Mountains of colorful socks. But secondly, yeah, I think we have a lot to learn from the healthcare industry. So they have learned that like the payer is different from the patient. And both of those experiences are important experiences. And the person who is paying you as an identity provider or as an identity company is not the person who is consuming your end product. And so you need to figure out how to make both of those people happy and figure out what they both need and not just say, oh, this is the person giving me the money, I'm only going to listen to them.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that is so important, right? And as startups, and Sarah, nobody knows where you're going, so we're not going to talk about that. Well, they'll find out, I'm sure, soon enough.
No,
but that's the thing.
We can talk about it. Yeah.
Awesome. So I think especially in the smaller companies, right, where it's like just get the deal done and make the buyer happy, right? We look at our personas in such a way that it's like, okay, who's the one who's going to validate and likes me and says, yeah, I'll buy the product, and then who has the actual signing authority, and let's make them happy. But helping the person who's actually going to be successful with the deployment of that capability or set of capabilities, right? Really understanding that, because I think startups should really think about this. It's going to help them on every other journey, on every other customer journey. You're not going to get caught in this bubble of the buyer just wants a pretty interface and a button to click, right? And then you're like, wow, we got him excited with the mock-ups or the feature flags and all the front end stuff, right? It's the stuff that happens behind the scenes that will have people raving about your product and then go talk about it with 10 other people.
Yeah, and we need to think more about so the people who are deploying often want more identity products, right? They want to spend the money, but they don't have the purchasing authority, right? They need to go to their CEO, they need to go to their board. And so I think we as identity professionals need to back up and look at, okay, well, if the CEO and the board don't see the value, that's on us, right? Then we need to make the charts and the graphs and the dashboards and the things that show, if you buy this extra $15 button, here's what you'll be able to see. Here's the thing that you'll be able to look at every day that shows you, like, look, we reduced this much fraud. We increased this much funnel. We changed the interface in such a way. And we don't do that today, right? We don't have things that are consumable by people who are not versed in identity terminology and identity concepts.
Yeah. No, you're so right about the yeah, no. I was going to say that's where, David's become my best friend in terms of helping me understand the terminology, because you're so right? I mean, and it's look, I don't want to start, kind of bashing people, but a lot of this is because of marketing, and I love marketing folks and sales folks, but I think we've created this hodgepodge of terminologies that sound similar to what we've grown up with in overall cyber or overall IT. Right? Like, I'll just tell you, I'll give an example, Sarah, and you probably know a lot about this, but, ITDR, right? That means two different things to two different people. And I know this because I've asked, because I was trying to learn, right? IGA, even when it came out, it was like, is this part of GRC or just under the GRC umbrella? Or is it really identity? Because it's got some components of compliance. So I think it's fine to call it and have a 3-letter word, because that's easy for us as human beings. We're kids at heart, right? We need something easy to grab onto. But the definition, explanation, and the explainer videos, I love what you said, Sarah. That just hits home with me, right? Like, just make it consumable so I don't have to open up a notebook and then have an argument with my boss on why I need to spend money on IGA. And his response to me is, go talk to the GRC team. They report up to compliance. They'll give you budget, right? And then you're stuck, right?
Well, at least we all agree on what zero trust means. I mean, that's the important thing, that everyone knows and we all have the same understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure we do.
Wait, I just came from a network. Okay. But there's
Oh,
lots of
you're a networking
experience.
person, and that might actually be true. Like,
Yeah, no, I'm the outlier. I'm just, I'm a special needs. I was
identity
a special
people
needs kid growing up. So
they are totally unaware that zero trust started as a networking concept.
yes, I actually going
They're
to bring
just
that
like,
up. So I
you
think
should not trust users, and I'm like, that's not what that means at all.
At all.
no, but the networking companies do have good explainer videos, right, about their product and how they look at zero trust. So that's not a bad thing. But I think that's only if you live in certain ecosystems, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this is
Yeah,
this is awesome. Go ahead.
I think part of it, right? I always like, closet history buff over here, right? So I like going back and looking at, well, how do we get here, right? How do we get to where we are? And if we look at for identity specifically, and I'll start around like kind of IGA, right? When we started to really sell this, and I feel like in the workforce we took IGA as the stronghold because after Sarbanes-Oxley and everything came out, it's like, okay, compliance. You got to do this thing, and like here's what people are paying for. So Sarah, kind of back to your point, it was like my payer, right, is totally different from the person that actually need to give it to. But like, hey, this is what they're paying for. But what do we do? So we said we're going to shape everything around what you want, payer, right? But what you want is a report that you've got to sign off about financials, and you really could give a crap about anything else. But that's how we're going to deliver the product, because that's what makes you feel like you got value, payer. You cut the check, right? And then with that, we kept kind of talking to that customer and going there. So our products more and more started looking that way, and we kind of built to that way. And then I look at Auth0 and kind of what they did when they came around, which was you take Auth0 and Okta, and separately, they both had two distinct styles that kind of made them different. Auth0 was, we are ground up, grassroots, give it to the developers, make this super easy, connecting where they're at. Here you go. Like, you need to go build something. We're going to make it super easy for you to build something. We're going to take a lot of the hard work out of you, but you're also going to work into your environment where you work. So you can kind of do what you want. And they loved it, right? And what happens? It spread like wildfire, because if you're a developer, developers like, listen, you make my job easier coding. I freaking love you. Right. And I'm going to tell Sarah, and I'm going to tell Samir, and I'm going to tell Jacob, and I'm going to tell and then I'm going to go to somewhere else, and guess what we're using? We're going to use this and so they really dug in on that and kind of built that grassroots organization to where, Samir, to your point, now like the devs are telling like, no, hey boss, we need this. Like, you want this to go out? Well, we need this. We've hit the limit that we can do. And they also did the always called the drug dealer play, right? We're going to give it to you for free, and then wait for you to get to the point where it's like, oh yeah, you like this. Great. Well, you're going to love this when we hit you with the enterprise deal. But anyway, it's that's how you get in and get sticky, right? And so that was their aspect. Okta did the one smart thing, whereas I used to always tell people Okta was a marketing company that just happened to create a identity product, right? They knew very quickly, how do we break this down? How do we talk to value and talk to pain and talk to what we are solving, right? No, they didn't say a single technical term for the first like 8 years. It was just, as we make identity easy. SSO. They found like the simplest terms, like we make it really easy for you to log in every product. That's it. We make it really easy for your users to log in and access their work. That's what we do. Oh, wow. That's awesome. They didn't talk about they didn't talk about SAML. They didn't say, we make it really easy for users to log in. That's fantastic. And they just kept pushing that and pushing that and pushing that and pushing that. And so what happens is Okta became synonymous with identity for a while there. It was like, you would talk to a regular person. It was like, what do you do? Oh, I work. Oh, like Okta? It's like, no, I do something completely different from Okta, but it's interesting that that's your connection to identity is Okta. So they own that message, right, to their business, their payer user. And so we've got products that were built to the payer that weren't very kind of flexible. We've got two companies coming up that like, hey, we're starting to realize that if we work with the developers and the people that actually use it, and if we market it and message it the right way and make it simpler, this thing comes easy. We also, from Okta's standpoint, we make things as simple as freaking possible. It's easier when you have open standards, stuff like that or whatever. And so over the course, we look at this, you can see how we kind of got to where we are today, right? Where it's like, okay, well now the customer is used to this. They've been in this for, almost 2 decades now. They understand that the education's been there, but now they're like, hey, this needs to all kind of come together, right? You guys aren't all kind of doing the same things. And you've given me a glimpse, right? I got this great thing of Auth0 that you made my developers super happy. I got this great thing early when Okta was like solving all my problems and this was super, and you were making it simple for me. I want more of that, but now we've gotten to a place where it's like, oh, you're really expensive, or hey, B, this is now really hard, or geez, I got all this other stuff, and like, what's coming on? We went away from that, right? And so now I think is this time in this market where we can truly look at it, and I think we are. I look at some of the competitors in this market. This is the most identity companies I've ever seen in my career in this market. But the thing that's interesting is that this is always good with tech. You've got people who say, like if the three of us said, we're going to start a new company today, we go, everything we know. We get to take everything that we learned, every single mistake from everybody else, but we get to start fresh with newer technology. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about tech. It's like, oh my God, we get to stand on all their shoulders and then we can go move 10 times faster than they can and go solve some of these things, right? So that's always going to be there. But also for the first time, what I'm seeing is we've had a long enough chain where we actually have practitioners that are founding these companies. It's like, no, I used to have to do this crap. Like, I know how hard this is. Let me go fix this problem and make it easier. And I now can talk to you, customer, because I know exactly what your problem is. And I think for the first time we have that because, you know, most of these, oh, and it's no fault to some of the older companies. This wasn't really a big thing then. But like Mark McClain, the Andre Durand of Ping, Mark McClain, so right? Identity teams didn't really exist when they started these companies, right? So there was nobody to say like, this is how we do it today. It wasn't there. Now we do. And so I think it just creates this beautiful, you know, ecosystem of new challengers with new ways of thinking, newer technology to kind of make this more exciting. So that was a little bit of a rant. But so the question there, Sarah, is like, when you look at this market and see the things that are coming, like what gets you excited when you look at this market and the ability to kind of compete?
Yeah, so I absolutely agree that leadership of an identity company has to be technical. They have to understand what's going on. So the company that I am going to, I start tomorrow. It's called Beyond Identity. And when I first met their CEO, I didn't know he was the CEO. I thought he was a developer. We had just had a conversation and it got so technical that I was like, oh, he must be, you know, one of the software engineers. And then we walk in the room and he goes, well, I'm the CEO. And it's like, oh, wow. You actually know what you're talking about. Like, I was actually giving a presentation to them and I was like, oh no, like I have to change my whole deck because like I was not going to talk about technical things. Like I thought I was talking to like a high level CEO. And so, yeah, Beyond Identity is one of many companies that has this chance to say, like, it's going to be, if Okta wanted to fix all their mistakes, or if AWS or Microsoft or anyone who has run an identity company for 10 or 15 years wants to fix all of the mistakes that they've made, they almost can't. Like, it is really, really hard when you have thousands of customers in production. You can't just swap things out on the back end, right? You can't just move fast and break things. You can't just say, oh, we screwed up that API, we're going to change it, right? Because you break all of your customers. And so there's a lot of opportunity for new identity companies to build experiences that are quite a bit better and quite a bit faster. So I completely agree with you that there are going to be newcomers in this market, and I think they're going to do really well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I think competition is always good, right? And it's great for the customers because they have more things to choose from. It can be kind of a little frustrating for customers because it's hard to figure out who does what. I give us a lot of blame in that because you kind of talked to it earlier, Sarah. We've just done a horrible job of glossary and thing. So many acronyms, so many things, and sometimes we say one word and we mean four different things. It's a context. I said it this way, so yeah, you get it, right? And the customers are like, no, I don't. What are you talking about? Help. But I think we're going to see in the next 3 to 5 years, I think the market's going to look completely different, right? I think we're just going to see this kind of newer landscape of how people are approaching it and coming about it, truly to represent what our customer market really is, which is, yes, you guys all have the same problem, but because there's different industries and different ways, there's different ways that you can go about solving it. Like you can still get to the finish line the same way, but you just might use different ways to go do it that make more sense for you. And now, instead of hammering 2 or 3 companies to bend to your will and everybody else's, you have selections where you can go, okay, this one really works for me, right? And allows me to do what I need to do, which I think is going to be, pretty awesome. So,
yeah, and I think we're going to see more niche vertical companies, right? So Okta is trying to be everything to everyone. And I think we're going
Right.
to see the first, like, no, I am a healthcare identity company. I am a fintech identity company. I am a, whatever the niche is, a retail identity company, right? Where they can really go in and solve that problem very precisely, where they don't have to compromise because they're trying to make everyone happy.
Yeah. That's actually that's
That's a very interesting
no,
point.
that's actually really insightful. Yeah, because I did a post early this week, and I'm starting to do a deep dive into Microsoft and their whole IAM platform, because it's coming up in so many people that I'm talking to. I'm like, okay, we're finally gonna have to admit that they have an identity platform and actually talk about it. But like, part of the one of the feedbacks that I got was like, hey, one guy's using, he goes, I love it for organization, works all great. He goes, but except for when they're trying to solve like companies that are retail that have like contingent workers, or they have like this kind of this environment where it's like, hey, we might onboard 30,000 people in 3 months, but they're only here for 3 months and then they're gone. And then like this kind of ferial worker, right? Like they need to be able to handle that. And like none of these systems, like, no, it's very strict. You are this. It's like, no, they come in, we kind of give them some stuff, and then they go this way, or they go like,
right.
That's
They're like,
totally
no, just
different,
create one of our really heavy duty workforce accounts and then just delete it. Like, that's going to work for you, right? It's like,
right.
Oh boy.
And then we'll charge you a ridiculous fee for every single user. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Why do I need to pay, right, for this one, what I'll call like a heavy user, which is like, they're going to be here for the next 20 years and I need all this stuff, but this person's going to be here for the next 3 months and I don't need the same features and functionality around them. I just need the basics, but you're asking me to pay the exact same and do the exact same thing for onboarding and setup and like, it's different, right? And so that to me is like, I think we're finally going to be able to start solving some of these things, right? And realizing that, especially now, the way we've changed a lot of organizations, how they work, this idea of, I believe the idea of this, you kind of said it in the beginning, sir, like this 9 to 5, I log into a place and here's what I do. That idea of that's the user has changed so much. I think that user is going to exist less and less. And it's really just like, hey, you are a user and here's what you need to get access. Like, here's what you need to do. And here's our need to empower you to do that. Doesn't really matter. I don't care where you come from. I don't care what you do. I don't like, you're sitting on a beach in Japan. Great. Like, then it's so much more around context now, because we truly live in a digital borderless, world now, where it's like, I could literally be working from anywhere. Like, I'm still shocked that there's so many companies that are like, you must come into the office. I'm like, why? I'm not knocking you for having an office. Great. Like, it comes in handy, but like, it literally, it doesn't matter anymore. Like, and I think we got it. We're going to start seeing more platforms that allow us to build to that way in which we work. Because I think some of these today, they just don't really allow for that without a lot of custom coding, configuration, moving stuff around, and that just shouldn't be the case.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, my rant's over. All right. Okay, so we're running long, which is great. Always fun talking. We'll wrap it up. Samir, any final thoughts or questions that we have for Sarah?
No questions for Sarah. I just want to say that I went on mute for a second to tell Alexa to shut up, and it worked. And she shut up. And I learned this from my 9-year-old daughter, who said, you can tell Alexa to shut up and it won't bother you. It's on your desk, I know. So I thought I'd say that because we are at Amazon, and I'm glad we got Sarah on this podcast. It took 5 years, and that's just amazing that we were patient. I do think we should bring Sarah back after a year, David, or even sooner, if you like, because I think the experiences from big company making, world impacting changes, and from what I can look at beyond identity, it looks like a really interesting place, disruptive. Would love to hear, and this is not a beyond identity podcast, but at the end of the day, we want to hear about these companies that are going to be part of the forefront of the next generation of identity startups.
Yeah, I'd love to come back on and let you know how my first year is going in crazy startup world.
Exactly. That's the fun part.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We'll do it. And then, okay, so we're putting it in stone. I'm writing it in stone right now. Next year, Identiverse escape room. It's happening. I'm going to tell my team right now. Listen, we don't schedule anything until we know when the escape room is. We're definitely doing that. Samir, we got to have you come out and be a part of it, because it is a lot of fun. Other than just hanging out with a bunch of people, and like, It's a great
Yeah,
time.
usually at Identiverse, I'm a sleazy sales guy who just stalks people at the coffee shop. So I'll definitely do something fun this time.
Good.
It'll be fun.
Awesome. We'll make it happen. All right, Sarah, thanks so much for coming on and spending time with us. It was great.
Yeah, great
Always
meeting
good
you.
to see you.
We will. I'm trying to think. What are you? Any other events this year? Are you going to do Gartner later this year?
I don't know yet. I'll definitely be at Beyond Con, which is the Beyond Identity conference. That's September 12th
Okay.
in New York. But other than that, I don't know. Everything's kind of up in the air. So
Gotcha. Okay. Well, hopefully before the year's out, if we find an event or something like that, we're at the same place. It'll be great to catch up. But until then, we'll be in touch.
awesome.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, guys.
All right, team. Listen, everybody, thank you so much for watching and listening, however you're consuming this content. You guys know what it is by now. Don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe wherever you're watching this. We're on YouTube. We're on Spotify. We're on all the podcast things. So whatever you use, I keep telling people, well, I use Google Cast. I'm like, oh, I don't know that. Well, it's on there. Thank you. Like, rate, and subscribe on that one. Don't forget to sign up for the Identity Jedi newsletter. You can catch that at theidentitygedi.com. Be on the lookout for Identity Jedi University coming next month. By the time you guys you guys will get this pretty soon, but it'll be coming next month. You can sign up. There's going to be courses there. Really excited about that. That's all the announcements we got. So you guys know what it is. Be good to each other. Be kind to each other. Love each other. We will see you guys on the next show. Bye for now.